Hi everybody. Today we're going to continue on with the story of Joseph. So I'm just going to do a little recap because it's a long story. You heard how Jacob had 12 sons and his wife Rachel had 2 sons. She had Joseph and Benjamin. Joseph was the older one, so he would have been her technical firstborn, although it was not Jacob's firstborn. But he was the son that his father loved the most. So he gave him a coat of many colors. And all his older brothers were jealous of him. They were so jealous that they wanted to get rid of him. There was something else they didn't like about Joseph. Joseph had special dreams that came from God in which they were bowing down to him. And they didn't like that either. Their younger brother, bowing down to their younger brother, they were like, I don't think so. So they had another reason not to like Joseph. So one day, they sold Joseph to some traders that were going to Egypt. They got money for him. They thought they were well rid of him, never to be seen again. And they took his coat of many colors and put blood on it and brought it to their father so that he thought that poor Joseph had been attacked and was dead. Jacob never got over it. He was so sad about Joseph, thinking that he was dead. Well, what happened to Joseph? He went down to Egypt and became a slave to a man named Potiphar, a very rich man. And everything that he did prospered. God blessed Joseph so that he did well. He worked hard. He was honest and upright and righteous. And so God blessed everything he did. Went well. Potiphar recognized this and gave him charge of everything he owned, so that Potiphar didn't even know how much he owned. Joseph was in charge of everything, but Potiphar's wife tried to take Joseph for her own. She tried to tempt him and get him to sin. He ran away. He did not want to sin, but Potiphar was told that it was the other way around, that Joseph had tried to get Potiphar's wife to sin. And so Joseph was thrown in prison. He was there for a long time, but once again, God blessed him, and he became the keeper of the prison. The keeper of the prison gave him the freedom and responsibilities that he himself had. So Joseph was basically in charge of the prison. And then he met the butler and the baker of the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And so they had dreams, and God gave Joseph the ability to tell them the meaning of their dreams. The butler was going to be given his job back, taken out of prison. The baker, unfortunately, was going to leave prison, but he was going to die. And the meaning of the dream was true. And the butler did go back to work for the Pharaoh, but he forgot about Joseph. Then, we heard last week how the Pharaoh had some dreams, could not understand them. They bothered him a lot. And so the butler suddenly remembered Joseph. Joseph was able to come to the Pharaoh and tell him through God what his dreams meant. God had given him the dreams. There was going to be 7 years of plenty, represented by 7 fat cows, and then 7 years of famine, represented by 7 skinny cows. And another dream very similar, there was 7 ears of corn that were fat, 7 ears of corn that were thin, that ate up the fat ones. So God told Joseph it meant there was going to be 7 years with lots of food. The harvest would be wonderful. And then 7 years of famine so bad they would forget they ever had 7 good years. So Joseph's advice to the Pharaoh was to find somebody who could stockpile all the food from the 7 good years to give to the people in the 7 bad years. And Pharaoh, he liked Joseph so well, he decided to give the job to him. He made him second in command of all of Egypt. Only Pharaoh was above him. And Joseph did what he said should be done. He collected all that food till there was so much food they couldn't even count it all. They had so much food stored away for the famine, and then the famine came, just as God had said. Well, what happened then? Well, back in Canaan, where Jacob, Joseph's father, and his brothers lived, there was a famine there too. This famine was not just in Egypt, it went all over the place. And so they were hungry in Canaan. And Jacob said to his sons, who were grown now, obviously all of them, he said, listen, I hear there is food in Egypt. I want you to take money and go down to Egypt and get us some food so that we don't starve. So Joseph's 10 brothers came to Egypt. You see, Joseph's younger brother, his full brother, Benjamin, he did not go. Why did he not go? It wasn't because he was too little. He was actually married with children of his own. But Jacob did not send him because he said, I've already lost Joseph. I do not want to lose Benjamin. I'm keeping Benjamin right here with me. He's not going anywhere. You guys, you cannot go to Egypt and get the food. Benjamin is staying here with me. So the 10 brothers went to Egypt. And there was Joseph. He was in charge of giving up the food. And they came to get food. Well, Joseph, he remembered his brothers, especially, I'm sure, seeing them all together like that. And they were speaking a different language than everyone else. They were from Canaan. They were speaking Hebrew. And he knew who they were. But Joseph himself, he was speaking the language of Egypt. And he looked like an Egyptian. He had his beard all shaved off. He was dressed like an Egyptian. He sounded like an Egyptian. How would they ever think that the person second in command to the Pharaoh could ever be their brother? They did not recognize him at all. But he knew who they were. And he wanted to find out. He wanted to find out the news from his family. He also wanted to find out if they were the same as they had been before. Remember, before they were so mean to him. They were hateful and jealous and constantly talking about him between themselves. They were against him. He wanted to find out if they were the same. He didn't want them to know who he was, if they were just as bad as they had always been. So he was pretty rough with them when he saw them. He said, "Who are you? You are spies. You have come to Egypt to find out whether we actually do have lots of food or if we are just as poor as everywhere else. You're spies. You've come to find things out about Egypt." And his brothers were afraid. These grown men, much older than him, they were afraid of him. And they were like, no, we are not spies. I promise. We are all brothers. We are all children of the same father. And we do have another brother back home. He's younger than us. And we did have another brother, but he's gone now. But we're all brothers. Well, Joseph was happy to hear about his father. So now he knew his father was still alive and that his younger brother, Benjamin, was still alive. When he heard Benjamin, he thought, I'd like to see my brother. How can I see my brother? He needed a plan. He wanted to figure out what to do about the situation. So what he did was he said, no, I don't believe you. You're all spies. And he got his servants to throw his brothers into prison. Just a little taste of their own medicine. Remember when they threw him in the pit? And then he ended up in prison when they sent him to Egypt. So they went to prison for a little while, just a little while. And then he let them out. He had formed his plan. And he said, listen, just in case you're telling the truth, I still think you're spies, but I'm going to let 9 of you go home. And I'm going to keep 1 of you here in prison. And if you want any more food, and if you want to come back and get your other brother, then you have to bring your younger brother. You have to show me. You need to prove to me that your story is true and you are not spies. I want to see with my own eyes this younger brother you're telling me about. If this is true, you'll bring him back next time. And so he took one brother, Simeon, and he tied him up right in front of them all so that they would feel, oh no, what's going on? This is for real. He is serious about this. This is scary. He tied up Simeon. He tied him up and he put him in prison. And then to his servants he said, by the way, put their money back in their bags. He didn't want them to have to pay for their food. He was pretending to be all rough and gruff. But he told his servants, put their money in their bags. So at the top of each of their bags of grain, he put their money that they had used to pay for the grain. So they would get it for free. And then they tied up the bags. They put it on the donkeys and away his brothers went back home. Well, when they stopped to feed the donkeys, one brother opened up his bag of feed and found the money, and he thought, oh no, he already thinks we're spies, and now we didn't really pay for the grain. He's going to think we're thieves too. This is not good. We cannot go back. And he showed his brothers, and their hearts just went cold. They were so scared. Oh no, we are in trouble now. And what would their father say about the thing with Simeon and Benjamin? Uh-oh, this was not going to be good. So they went home and they told Jacob what had happened. And they said, listen, he told us we cannot go back and get more food unless we bring Benjamin with us. And Jacob was mad. He said, oh, well then you're not going back because Benjamin is not leaving me. He said, you're going to bring my gray hairs down to the grave. You're going to kill me. I've already lost one son. Now Simeon's gone, and you want to take away Benjamin too? That is not happening. You are not going back there with Benjamin. You can forget about that. And Reuben, the oldest brother, remember the one who had tried to save Joseph earlier, Reuben said, listen, if we don't bring Benjamin back, you can have my two sons. You can take them. You can kill them if you want to, but I promise we'll bring Benjamin back. And his father was like, nope, you are not getting Benjamin. You won't be going back. Jacob was so upset. He said, why did you even tell him you had a brother? And they said, well, he was just asking us about our family. He thought we were spies. How are we supposed to know what he was going to do with that information? So, oh, that picture doesn't come up yet. So they ate all the food. Everything was fine for a little while. There was actually a lot of them now. Each one of Joseph's older brothers, and even Benjamin himself, had gotten married and had children of their own. There was a lot of people to feed, and it was the famine, and so they ran out of food again. And remember, the famine was going to last for 7 years, although they didn't know that. And Jacob said, oh, we're out of food. You guys better get your donkeys and go back to Egypt, get us some more food. And they were like, Dad, don't you remember? The guy who gives out the food said we can't go back unless we bring Benjamin. He said, well, you can't bring Benjamin. And Judah, Reuben's brother, Judah, he said, listen, I promise, Father, I promise we will bring Benjamin back on my life. I will be forfeit for him. You can do whatever you want to me. If we do not bring Benjamin back, I promise we will bring Benjamin back. But we need food or we're all going to die, even Benjamin. And so Jacob said, oh, fine, you can take Benjamin, but you make sure you bring him back. So off they went back to Egypt. Joseph saw them coming, and this time he saw Benjamin was there, or at least he saw another brother. He thought, oh, that must be Benjamin. So he told his servants, listen, take them to my house. I'll finish up here with these other people. You take them to my house, and I want them to stay at my house for dinner. So set the table, get some food. So they took the brothers to his house, and they were like, oh no, uh-oh, we're really in trouble. He found out about the money in our sacks. We better tell him. And so when they got to the house, they told the steward, who had the job that Joseph used to have for Potiphar, I assume, the one who was in charge of Joseph's house. They said, listen, we have something to confess. Last time we came and bought food here, we got home and found out that all our money was in our bags. So we brought it back again. Here you go. Here's all the money from last time, and here's all the money to buy food from this time. And my dad, he even sent a big gift for Joseph. So here it is. And they went and they got all this stuff that Jacob had sent as a gift to Joseph, not knowing who he was, hoping that he would look at them kindly, realize they were not spies, and allow Simeon and Benjamin to go home again. So they had nuts, and they had spices, and they had special oils, very nice gifts to give to Joseph. And the steward of the house said, oh, thank you, everything is fine. Your God must have blessed you that this money was in the top of your sacks. You are not in trouble, everything is fine. And they set the table, and the brothers were invited for lunch, and Joseph came in to see them. And Joseph was so overcome when he saw Benjamin. He was trying to hold it together and pretend that he was like this big stranger, this Egyptian. But when he saw Benjamin, he just wanted to run over and give him a hug. His younger brother was there at last, but he didn't want his brothers to know who he was yet. And he could hear them talking in Hebrew. He still understood what they were saying, but they didn't know he could understand, and so they talked right in front of him. And earlier, when Simeon was tied up and put in jail, he had heard them talking, and they had said things like, oh, it's all our fault that this is happening. All these horrible things that are happening that he thinks we're spies, and Simeon's getting put in jail, and we got him put in jail. It's punishment for us for what we did to our younger brother. We should never have done that to Joseph, and now we're being punished. And Joseph heard them say all these things, and he knew that they were still remembering what they had done to him, and they were no longer happy about it. They actually felt bad about what they had done. So here they were again. They were in his house, and he knew who they all were, and he got his servants to arrange the table where they were going to eat so that they were all set up from youngest to oldest. And when they sat down in their places, they looked at each other and they realized, how did he know how old we all were? They were all grown men. They would have all looked pretty much the same age. They were like, how did he know where we should all sit? That's really weird. That's really freaky. What's going on here? And then when it was time to serve the meal, Joseph didn't sit at their table because he was supposedly an Egyptian, and the Egyptians were not allowed to eat with Hebrews. And so he sat at a separate table. And they did not think this was strange because he was so important and they were just visitors from another country. But when they served the food, Joseph made sure that his brother Benjamin got 5 times as much food as anybody else at the table. They were like, that's funny. How come he has more than us? But they weren't upset about it the way they would have been when they were younger. With Joseph, when Joseph got more things or better things than them, they were no longer jealous like that. So everything seemed fine. They had a good time. They enjoyed their dinner together with Joseph there. So they thought everything was fine. They got their bags of food to take back. They got Simeon out of prison. He ate with them at the table. Everything seemed good. But Joseph wasn't done. He did not yet tell them who he was. When he saw Benjamin, he was so upset, he had to go into another room and cry for a while before he was fit to wash his face and get himself all prim and proper and go out and pretend that he was the important man again and didn't know who they were. So he had one more test for them to see what they were really like. Would they be jealous of Benjamin the way that they were jealous of Joseph? Would they throw Benjamin under the bus, so to speak, as they had done to Joseph? He wanted to find out. So when the servants were bagging up their food that they had brought to take home to Jacob, to take home to Canaan, not only did Joseph say to put their money back in the bags because he didn't want them to actually have to pay for it, but he told his steward to take his special silver cup and put it in the mouth of Benjamin's bag to see what would happen. And then he sent them on their way. Off they went. And they didn't get very far down the road when Joseph said to his servants, okay, I want you to go follow them now and do this. I can't imagine what his servants thought with all these strange things he was telling them to do, but they just did whatever he wanted them to do. I am assuming that just like God had turned the hearts of everyone around Joseph to him, so the people around Joseph respected him and cared for him and wanted to please him, that the same thing happened with his servants, because they did whatever he said and never questioned, and they supported him in everything, not as though they were slaves, but as though they were friends. So off the servants went. They caught up to the brothers, they stopped them, and they pretended they were all angry. They said, how could you have done this? You were fed and you were blessed by our master, and then you stole from him? How could you do this? And they were like, what are you talking about? We didn't steal anything. We promise. We did everything you told us to do. We brought back the extra money and everything. No, why would we steal from you? We did not steal. And they said, well, what about the silver cup? Our master's silver cup that he uses to divine. Like, and that means that he would like tell the future with this silver cup. They were just making this up. This was a special, special silver cup. You have taken it. And they were like, no, if you find the silver cup in any of our bags, that one will stay and be your servant forever. Well, that was a silly thing to say because they were just so sure no one had stolen it. They didn't know it had been put in one of their bags. So they started with the oldest and they looked in each of their bags and they got to the youngest. They finally got to Benjamin at the very last, the last bag. They opened it up and what did they find? They found the silver cup. Oh no, then their blood ran cold. Oh no, we're in trouble now. Oh, we thought everything was good. It's not good. Benjamin, of all people, the one they promised to bring back. I'm sure they were so worried. Back they went to see Joseph again. And there he was, pretending to be angry. You've stolen my cup. How could you do this? You'll be my servant forever. And the brothers, Judah in particular, said, no, I promise. You don't understand. My father hardly let us bring Benjamin. You don't understand. He had another son that he thinks was attacked by wild animals and died. It is so important for us to bring Benjamin home. If we don't bring Benjamin home, our father will die. He will be so sad. Benjamin has to go home. Judah said, listen, I gave my life in forfeit for his. Take me. I will be your servant forever. Just please let Benjamin go home to his father. Well, Joseph realized at that point that his brothers were not the same as they had been before. They were not going to allow anything to happen to Benjamin, anything similar to what had happened to Joseph. They cared about their father. They cared about Benjamin. Judah was willing to give his own life in exchange. And so Joseph finally told them who he was. He was so upset that he sent all his servants out of the house. He didn't want them to see him. And then he started to cry. He cried so loudly. They could hear him in all the houses round about. People outside could hear him. He was crying so much. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, who you thought was dead. Can you just imagine what they were thinking? Joseph? Well, yes, I know we sold him to Egypt, but second in command to the Pharaoh? This is Joseph? He's so powerful. What if he wants revenge for what we did to him? Then they were probably afraid of him, even more so, because of what they had done to him. But Joseph said, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. What you meant for evil, God has meant for good. He said, I know why I'm here. You thought that you were getting rid of me. But God had a plan, and he sent me here to save all of you. He said, listen, you do not understand. I know there's going to be 7 years of famine. This is just the beginning. There's 7 years of famine coming. I'm here in Egypt to save you. So this is what you need to do. You need to go home and tell my father, tell your father that you all need to come to Egypt. There's food here. You will be safe and fed in Egypt. I'll talk to the Pharaoh. There'll be a place for you to live. You need to go get your families and come back here so that you will not die in the famine. He said, I forgive you. What you meant for evil, God meant for good. So Joseph did not take it personally what they had done to him. He realized that God had a bigger purpose. And we also need to be like Joseph and forgive those who try and hurt us, knowing that God has everything in control. And we may not know what his purposes are, but we can trust him that he cares about us. And yes, bad things happen. They do. Those were very bad things that happened to Joseph, but God made it for good. And if good things don't happen to us here in this life, then they will when we go to see Jesus in heaven, because he has a new life planned for us there if we have given our hearts to him and repented from our sins. And so, because we've sinned just like Joseph's brothers. So we need God's forgiveness, but we also need to forgive others, just like Joseph did. So you can see how this big story is all coming together with God's plan, but it is not done yet. We will have more next week. So just don't forget that God has purpose for your life. He can bring good things out of bad things, no matter how bad things are. And we need to forgive others. Next week, we will hear more about Joseph and what happened with his family. Thanks.